Silence fell over the heart of Rome as a single residence came to concentrate power, religion, and secrets that could change the fate of the entire city. Within those walls, unseen decisions shaped the future of the empire, while the population believed that everything was normal. But few knew that there in 62 BC, the official residence of Julius Caesar concealed tensions, scandals, and choices that could destroy his reputation in a single instant. What really happened inside Julius Caesar's official residence when he ruled Rome in 62 BC? And why did this place become so important that it influenced not only his personal life, but also his rise to absolute power? By the end of this story, you will understand how a single space was able to change the course of all Roman history. Subscribe and like this video so YouTube shares it with more people. Give it a super thanks if you can, or comment on what surprised you the most. In 62 BC, Julius Caesar's trajectory entered a decisive phase that would profoundly change his place within Roman society and increase his visibility among the people. At that time, he was already known for his ambition, political intelligence, and ability to win allies. But assuming the position of Pontifex Maximus meant much more than achieving a respected title. It meant entering a circle of power that controlled ancient traditions considered essential for Rome's survival. The role demanded profound knowledge of religious practices, sacred calendars, and ceremonies that marked each stage of public life, from festive celebrations to rituals performed in times of crisis. The person responsible for this position needed to ensure that each ceremony was executed correctly, as the Romans believed that any error could provoke the wrath of the gods and bring negative consequences for the entire city. This level of responsibility transformed the office holder into a figure observed with constant attention, both by ordinary citizens and by political leaders who depended on religious stability to maintain social order. Throughout this period, Caesar came into direct contact with priests, magistrates, and representatives of influential families, creating relationships that strengthened his presence in the public sphere and increased his reputation as someone capable of handling delicate matters with discipline and authority. Another important aspect of this position was control over the religious calendar, which determined which days were appropriate for public meetings, trials, and political decisions, placing in the hands of the religious leader an indirect influence on the rhythm of the city's political life. This silent power made the position even more strategic, as it allowed him to shape the functioning of society discreetly without the need for direct confrontations. Furthermore, the constant visibility associated with the post contributed to consolidating Caesar's image as a man trusted by the gods and a defender of Roman traditions, something highly valued by a population that saw religion as a fundamental element for collective prosperity. Upon receiving the right to reside in the so-called House of the Pontifex Maximus, he began to live in an environment that directly reflected his new status, surrounded by religious symbols, structures dedicated to worship, and spaces where spiritual decisions were made daily. This residence served not only as a dwelling, but also as a meeting point between religion and public authority, where important visitors were received and where many religious guidelines were defined before being presented to the people. Living in this place meant being permanently immersed in a space that reminded everyone, including Caesar himself, of the importance of maintaining discipline, tradition, and respect for collective beliefs. The environment also conveyed a powerful visual message to those passing through the region, as the presence of the Pontifex Maximus in that space indicated that the balance between the gods and the state was under constant vigilance. This change in his daily life brought new routines and responsibilities that demanded rigorous organization and the ability to manage both spiritual matters and political expectations, further strengthening his ability to lead and influence people. Over time, the experience gained in this position contributed to developing a strategic sense that would be fundamental in future stages of his career, allowing him to better understand the behavior of the masses, the value of traditions, and the impact of symbolic decisions on public opinion. Thus, that period marked not only a personal achievement, but a decisive step in building a solid public image, respected and feared at the same time, paving the way for his figure to become increasingly central to the history of Rome, and preparing the ground for the events that would later transform his name into one of the best known in all of antiquity. Julius Caesar's official residence was located in one of the busiest and most significant areas of the ancient city, the Roman Forum, a space that functioned as the true center of Rome's collective life, bringing together in one place the most important activities of Roman daily life. Walking through this area, one could see magistrates discussing laws, merchants trading goods, citizens participating in debates, and priests performing rituals that marked the spiritual rhythm of the city, creating an environment full of movement, sounds, and events that demonstrated the vitality of urban life. The Forum was not merely a physical place, but a symbolic setting where the oldest traditions were manifested and decisions that determined the future of the community were made, making any residence located there a point of enormous prestige and visibility. Near this residence was the revered Temple of Vesta, a building that inspired profound respect among the inhabitants and was seen as one of the spiritual pillars that sustained the security and continuity of the Roman state. This temple was dedicated to the goddess Vesta, a figure associated with the protection of the home, family, and fire, symbolizing the unity and permanence of the city over time. Inside the temple, the sacred fire was kept permanently burning by the Vestal virgins, young women chosen in childhood to serve the goddess with absolute dedication, living under strict rules that demanded discipline, purity, and total commitment to their religious responsibilities. Maintaining this fire had a profoundly symbolic meaning, as it represented the continuity of the city itself and the constant presence of divine protection over the people, creating a collective feeling of security and stability that influenced how the Romans perceived their destiny. The daily care of this flame required continuous attention and constant vigilance, making the temple a silent and respected space, where any failure was considered extremely serious and capable of instilling fear among the citizens. The proximity between Caesar's residence and this temple created a unique environment, where daily life was marked by the constant presence of ceremonies, sacred chants, and visits from religious authorities who frequently passed through the region. Living in this place meant witnessing daily the relationship between belief and social organization, observing how each ritual gesture contributed to strengthening the feeling of collective identity and reinforcing respect for traditions inherited from ancestors. The surrounding environment was also marked by monuments, statues, and public buildings that commemorated past conquests and celebrated important figures in Roman history, creating a setting that conveyed pride and a sense of historical continuity. For those who lived in this space, each dawn brought a new sequence of activities that reflected the importance of that place to the life of the city, from popular assemblies to religious ceremonies that gathered crowds seeking divine protection and spiritual guidance. The constant presence of citizens, soldiers, and political leaders transformed the area into a strategic meeting point, where information circulated rapidly and decisions took shape before being announced to the rest of the population. Living in such a symbolic location also meant assuming a prominent position in the eyes of the people, as any movement in that area was easily observed and commented on, reinforcing the idea that this space was directly linked to public responsibility and the fulfillment of traditions that sustained social order. The surrounding area conveyed a continuous sense of solemnity, with the sounds of footsteps echoing on the ancient stones, voices echoing between columns, and the glow of the sacred fire illuminating the temple's interior at nightfall, creating an atmosphere that blended reverence and respect. At the same time, daily life continued to unfold around it, with people traversing the space in search of justice, commerce, or participation in public events, transforming the forum into a stage where different aspects of Roman life met and mutually influenced each other. This environment reinforced the perception that living in that place was much more than occupying a privileged residence. It was being part of a symbolic system that connected religious beliefs, political decisions, and the collective trust in the protection of the gods. Thus, the residence, situated within this setting, became a strategic point, reflecting the union between tradition and authority, conveying to the people the feeling that the city remained protected and organized under the constant vigilance of sacred practices and the leadership established there. The residence where Julius Caesar lived was known as Domus Publica, a name that conveyed the idea of a space belonging to the collective interest and not just to private use, reflecting the institutional role that place played within Roman society. Although today only archaeological vestiges remain that allow us to imagine its original form, scholars believe that this residence had considerable dimensions and presented a careful plan, typical of constructions intended for figures of great public responsibility. The internal organization of the house followed a pattern that favored both family life and the performance of official tasks, creating an environment that harmoniously reconciled domestic life and administrative duties. Right at the entrance, the central atrium functioned as the heart of the residence, a large space that received natural light from an opening in the roof and served as a starting point for any visitor arriving at the place. This environment conveyed a sense of order and welcome, allowing guests to wait while being announced and creating a first impression of authority and organization. Around this central space were corridors leading to the different sectors of the residence, each designed with a specific function and intended to ensure practicality in daily life. The private bedrooms for the family offered a more secluded and tranquil environment, where personal activities could take place away from the constant flow of visitors and employees, creating a contrast between domestic intimacy and the intense public activity that marked other areas of the house. In addition to these private spaces, the residence had areas dedicated to administrative work, where documents were organized, records were kept, and instructions were prepared before being presented to authorities and the public. These environments were essential for the regular functioning of the activities associated with the position held by Caesar, as they allowed decisions to be structured clearly and transmitted efficiently. Another important element of the residence were the open internal courtyards, designed to ensure constant ventilation and adequate lighting throughout the day, creating a more comfortable and healthy environment for those who lived and worked there. These courtyards also offered a pleasant circulation space where it was possible to walk, talk, and organize informal meetings, making the residence not only functional, but also visually pleasing. The presence of rooms designated for official meetings reinforced the institutional character of the house, transforming it into a place where relevant discussions were held and where important decisions could be made in a controlled and respected environment. In these rooms, it was common to receive influential figures from Roman society, such as priests responsible for rituals, magistrates in charge of public administration, and prominent citizens seeking guidance or presenting issues relevant to the community. The constant movement of these people made the environment dynamic and required rigorous organization to ensure that each meeting occurred in an orderly and productive manner. The residence, therefore, was not limited to being a space for family life, but played an essential role in the functioning of the structures that sustained Roman public life, serving as a meeting point between different sectors of society. The way the rooms were distributed demonstrated a concern for efficiency and symbolism, creating a sense of stability and continuity that reflected respect for traditions and the fulfillment of public responsibilities. At the same time, the presence of decorative and architectural elements typical of the period helped to convey prestige and authority, reinforcing the image that this place represented a center of decisions and guidelines that directly influenced the daily life of the city. The daily routine within the Domus Publica was marked by a sequence of activities ranging from receiving visitors to organizing formal meetings, creating a constant flow of interactions that strengthened political and social relations. Every detail of the residence contributed to forming an environment that combined practicality and symbolism, allowing administrative tasks to be carried out efficiently while maintaining an atmosphere of respect and discipline. In this way, the Domus Publica consolidated itself as a strategic point within the functioning of the Roman state. A space where decisions were planned, guidelines were defined, and relationships were strengthened, reflecting the importance of that place not only as a dwelling, but as a true center of organization and influence within the society of the time. Within the trajectory of Julius Caesar, one of the most remarkable episodes of his personal life occurred precisely within the Domus Publica, where institutional routine mixed with unexpected events that could escalate far beyond simple domestic conflicts. In this context, the presence of his wife Pompeia became involved in a situation that quickly transcended the boundaries of private life and transformed into a matter of collective interest throughout the city of Rome. The episode took place during the Bona Dea Festival, an extremely reserved celebration dedicated exclusively to women and held under strict rules that prohibited the presence of men under any circumstances. This festival was surrounded by strong religious and cultural symbolism, as it was part of the oldest traditions of Rome, being associated with rituals of protection, fertility, and spiritual harmony, which made any violation of its rules considered extremely serious. During this ceremony, a politician named Publius Clodius Pulcher allegedly managed to enter the venue disguised, using a female identity to blend in with the participants and achieve personal objectives involving inappropriate approaches to figures present at the event. This action, upon being discovered, generated an immediate reaction of shock and indignation among those involved, as it represented not only a breach of social norms, but also a direct offense to the most respected religious traditions of the time. News of the event spread rapidly through different sectors of Roman society, fueling rumors, interpretations, and debates that placed the official residence at the center of an unexpected reputational crisis. The impact was so great that it transcended the private circle and directly affected Caesar's public image, who at that time already occupied a prominent position in Roman politics and religion. Even without any concrete evidence linking his wife to any involvement in the incident, the social and political pressure became intense, leading Caesar to make a decision that surprised many contemporaries and generated discussions that would resonate for a long time. He chose to end his marriage to Pompeia not as a direct accusation, but as a measure that reflected the importance of public image in his career and the need to preserve the population's trust in his integrity. This decision was accompanied by a justification that would become widely known throughout Roman history, expressing the idea that the reputation of a public figure could not be associated with any form of doubt or suspicion. By acting in this way, Caesar transformed an event initially restricted to the private sphere into a landmark of political and social repercussion, demonstrating how personal matters could directly influence the public perception of leadership and authority. The episode also highlighted the level of exposure that figures of high prestige faced in Rome, where every gesture was observed and interpreted from the perspective of morality, tradition, and responsibility to the state. From this event, the Domus Publica came to be remembered not only as an administrative and religious center, but also as the setting for one of the most commented upon episodes of Caesar's personal life, where private decisions became part of the city's historical narrative. This moment further reinforced the complexity of Roman political life, in which honor, image, and reputation had a decisive weight in the construction of power and the maintenance of public influence. Living in the Domus Publica within the context of Julius Caesar's life represented an extremely rare and highly significant condition within the social and political structure of ancient Rome. It was not merely a residence, but a space that functioned as a direct extension of institutional power. In a society deeply marked by rigid hierarchies and a strong distinction between decision-making centers and popular areas, the simple fact of inhabiting the forum placed any individual in a position of constant visibility and immediate recognition by the population. While a large part of the citizens lived in distant regions, in simple dwellings, or in densely populated neighborhoods where daily life was marked by hardship and anonymity, remaining in this central space meant being at the heart of the activities that shaped the city's destiny. This geographical difference also reflected a symbolic difference, as being in the political and religious center indicated proximity to the most important decisions and to the figures responsible for governing the state. In this context, Caesar's presence in the Domus Publica served as a continuous demonstration of relevance and authority, since his residence was situated in an environment where everything happened in real time, from administrative discussions to ceremonies involving the collective participation of the population. This constant exposure directly associated his image with the idea of institutional stability, conveying the perception that his actions were connected to maintaining order and the continuity of the traditions that sustained Rome. The choice to reside in this location also had a psychological effect on the population, as it created a sense of proximity between the leader and the daily functioning of the city, reinforcing the idea that he was not a distant figure, but someone embedded in the very center of decision-making. This perception helped strengthen his public reputation, because the more visible his presence was in such an important space, the more the image of someone indispensable to the balance of the political system was consolidated. Furthermore, daily interaction with priests, magistrates, and influential representatives broadened his network of contacts and increased his ability to articulate, allowing him to understand more deeply the power dynamics that governed Roman society. This accumulated experience within such a strategic environment contributed to developing leadership skills that would be essential in later phases of his career, especially in how he handled political alliances and high-impact decisions. The Domus Publica, in this sense, functioned as a point of convergence between personal life and public responsibility, where every action taken could be interpreted as a direct reflection of the institutional position held. This level of exposure demanded constant discipline and awareness that any behavior would have an immediate impact on collective perception, making the routine in this space even more demanding and symbolic. Over time, This interaction with the center of Roman life helped consolidate an image of authority that depended not only on formal titles, but also on continuous presence in an environment laden with historical and cultural significance. This image building was fundamental to strengthening his political career, as it allowed his figure to be gradually associated with the idea of centralized leadership and the ability to influence the city's direction. Thus, the experience of living in the Domus Publica not only reflected his position at that specific moment, but also acted as a decisive element in shaping his future reputation, contributing to his being remembered as one of the most remarkable figures in Roman history and as an enduring symbol of power, strategy, and political transformation. Following the consolidation of Julius Caesar's trajectory and the events leading to the assassination of Julius Caesar, the space where the ancient Domus Publica stood continued to hold relevance within the urban and political evolution of Rome, even though its original meaning was gradually transformed over time. With the transition from the republican system to the imperial period, new architectural and administrative priorities began to redefine the use of the city's central areas, incorporating ancient structures into broader urban reorganization projects. In this context, during the reign of Augustus, Rome underwent an intense process of reforms that sought not only to modernize the city, but also to reinforce the image of continuity and stability of the new regime. These interventions included the renovation of public buildings, the reorganization of sacred spaces, and the integration of historical areas into the new imperial urban design, ensuring that places associated with important figures of the past remained connected to the city's identity. The region where the ancient residence was located was, throughout this process, reinterpreted within a new political logic, in which the memory of previous events became part of the symbolic construction of imperial power. Over the centuries, the original structure was progressively altered, until only fragments and vestiges could be identified through modern archaeological excavations. These preserved remains allow scholars to better understand how the spatial organization of that period functioned and how different political and religious functions were interconnected in the same urban environment. Currently, the site associated with the ancient Domus Publica remains part of the Roman Forum, one of the most important archaeological sites in the world, attracting researchers and visitors interested in understanding the origins of Roman civilization. Even in its ruined state, the space continues to convey a strong sense of historical presence, as each fragment found reveals details about daily life, institutional practices, and the social organization of one of the most influential societies of antiquity. The partial preservation of these structures allows a direct connection to the past, offering a concrete view of how the city evolved over time and how different periods left their mark on the same territory. Furthermore, the preservation of these vestiges reinforces Caesar's importance within the historical narrative, as his connection to this place helps illustrate the beginning of a trajectory that had a lasting impact on Western politics and culture. The current environment, although silent and fragmented, still carries the symbolic weight of events that shaped the destiny of Rome and influenced later generations. Thus, the ancient space of the Domus Publica is not merely a collection of ruins, but a living testament to the transformation of a city that went from republic to empire, preserving in its structures the echoes of a period in which political decisions, religious beliefs, and personal lives were deeply intertwined in the same historical setting.